right. Good morning. Anybody here? Not yet. This is Joel. It's Friday. Ben is not here. AC, good old AC. Always the first one in. Good morning, AC. And Lucas, always right behind her. Hi. Thanks for checking in, guys. I will go ahead and start the show.
28 minutes after the hour now, Venezuela once again accepting U.S. deportation flights after President Trump said the airspace above and around the country should be considered closed. The commander-in-chief doubling down on his mission to protect national security and stop the Maduro regime.
Venezuela sends us drugs, but Venezuela sends us people that they shouldn't be sending. They emptied their prisons into our country. They sent us killers, murderers. They sent us drug dealers at the highest level. They sent us gang members. They sent us people from their mental institutions. They emptied their mental institutions into our country.
So what can we expect to see from the administration next? White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly joins us now. Anna, thank you so much for joining us this morning. How are we to read this latest news when it comes to deportation flights? Is this an indication that tensions are cooling between the United States and Venezuela?
Well, look, the president and the entire administration have been consistent throughout all of this. Maduro is not the legitimate ruler of Venezuela. He is the leader of a narco-terrorist cartel. And as you played for your viewers here, the president reiterated that yesterday. They are sending the absolute worst of the worst into our country: drug dealers, rapists, illegal aliens seeking to destroy our country with these illicit narcotics. And so this president hasn't taken any options off the table when it comes to carrying out his mandate to eliminate this scourge of illicit drugs coming into our homeland. Because remember, this president was resoundingly elected on a promise to deport illegal aliens and also to take on a cartels. That is something he promised all the way back in 2023. So he's going to continue to do that to protect families across the United States from these illicit narcotics that tragically are killing far too many people in our country.
Okay. So that's the story. All right, back here. I have been tangentially following this story as it goes along. It does bring to mind some things that have happened over my lifetime. I know that back in the late 80s, I believe it was 1989, George Bush I authorized an invasion of Panama with Manuel Noriega, and that was not a declared war. And he was arrested because of his drug dealings. Drugs have been coming over our southern border and into our country from the south for decades and decades now. And we really have not done that much about it. And they are right. Trump was elected. This was one of his promises. And, you know, this is his MO. He kind of does what every man would think that makes sense. If we have drugs coming across our southern border, well, we close our southern border. If there are boats coming with drugs on them to bring illegally into the United States that are going to kill our citizens or addict our citizens, you stop them. If they don't stop them, you blow them up. I mean, it's action that other presidents, Republican or Democrat, for some reason, have never been willing to take, and he's taking action. I know that there is a difference between him protecting our borders, which I think is completely legitimate, and the opposition to him has really no leg to stand on when they talk about it. If our border is porous, if our border is open to all kinds of people, like he said, the worst people in South America, this is talking about Venezuela, other countries have done this, are doing this, just emptying out their prisons, their mental institutions, sending the worst people they possibly can into our country. And we've seen the results of it. We've seen innocent people murdered, car accidents, drug gangs, Trendiagua and MS-13, all these guys are coming in. By the amount of them that are arrested and deported, you've seen how many have come in. That's probably just the tip of the iceberg. So my thinking on this is, as far as him blowing up the boats, they are obviously, they remind me of the old drug running boats off Miami, the old cigarette boats that came, the drug cartels were using there. And that was back in the 80s. And it's, if you remember the crack epidemic of the 80s and the cocaine epidemic of the 80s, it wiped out a whole generation of young men, young black men, really. And now we have a new embodiment of that in fentanyl, which is wiping out another generation of young men, young white men, and to generalize about it. So these things, this seems to be South America's way to undermine us. And I'm as far as protecting our border and stopping these drug boats, I have no problem with it. And there's, like I said, there's been a precedent set for it. Like I said, in Panama, when we just invaded Panama, we haven't done that yet. There is talk of some kind of actual military action against Venezuela. That to me would be crossing a line that maybe you need a declaration of war or some kind of, there is an authorization of the use of force that Obama used in his presidency in Syria. And if anybody could tell me why Obama was drone striking Syria constantly, all these years later, I still have no real understanding of what we were doing in Syria that whole time. But nobody complained too loudly about that. And I know there were a lot of innocent civilians killed in that. So again, this is part Trump derangement syndrome and part just kind of uneasiness with someone actually taking action against something that's so obviously a problem. I know one of my neighbors is a doctor. He's a podiatrist, but yet he tells me of all the fentanyl cases he sees come into the hospital right near us. And sometimes they have Narcan to inject in time, but sometimes they don't. And it's just an entire generation of young men and young people. I'm sure there's young women too, but mostly young men who are taking these drugs, and they're deadly, and they're being pushed and supplied by the governments of South America. So why wouldn't we take action? I'm not quite sure what the opposition to it is, other than just opposition to whatever Trump is doing. And that's going to happen from the Democratic side. How many from the Republican side are going to do it? I don't know. But I would suggest they not do that, because the American public really doesn't feel the outrage. Maybe we're just conditioned out of it. Like I said, by all the years of Obama doing that, and nobody really cared then, and nobody's going to have sympathy for these drug runners. And that's really what the opposition to what Trump is doing is trying to tell us we need to feel somehow a sense of injustice against these narco terrorists, you call them what they are, I guess, from a communist government, illegitimate communist government, because there was an election in Venezuela last year, I think, and Maduro was defeated, and yet he's still in power. So he's not even legitimate. Lucas, is that true? Some of the new fentanyl doesn't respond to naloxone. Is that Narcan? And that's scary. Yeah. I mean, so that makes sense in an evil sort of way, because the whole goal of these South American governments, like Venezuela, is to poison America. And so if we come up with a drug that counteracts their drug that they're sending us, they're just going to modify their drug so they can get Narcan down there or not naloxone. So they'll just make their drug, the new batches, resistant to it. They're not going to stop. What makes anyone think that they're going to stop? They haven't stopped. We finally have a strong horse in the White House. Finally have a man of action, someone who doesn't really care about the political calculations of what he's doing. He cares about protecting America. He genuinely does. Say what you want about Trump, but there's very little that's ambiguous about the man. And there's very little doubt that if he promises to do something, he's going to do it. So yeah, that is scary. AC, I agree. So, I mean, they're not modifying their actions at all. And it seems to me the people in opposition to this, yeah, I can be picky about it and say, well, he doesn't have this authorization or that authorization. Well, then give him the authorization. That's your job. Yeah, this is what we voted for. You're right, Joel. That's what we voted for. Yeah. What about Canada here, Lucas? Canada is like a hub for lost souls. Most of the drugs in America actually comes through Canada. Look up Lower East Side, Vancouver. Really? Well, and that's another thing. If the southern border is closed, they're not going to fold their tent and go home. They're going to find other ways to get it in. And we've been hearing about the Canadian border too, that since we have all so focused on the front door that they're just bringing it through the back door. And that's kind of what Trump is faced with. This is kind of what he inherited, and he promised to deal with it. He promised to take action, and he is. So if Congress is worried about him not having authorization, I'd suggest they give him the authorization. Stop, But again, they have to say something, because they are in a position where they're forced to defend narco terrorists. They're forced to defend the people that are bringing this drug that's killing 100,000 of our young people every year, or had been. I haven't seen the statistics for last year. Or I should say for this last year, Trump's first year in office. I wouldn't be surprised if they've gone down. I wouldn't be surprised if they've gone up either, if they're coming through Canada, or they stayed the same. But we'll look up Lower East Side, Vancouver. What about it, Lucas? Can you give me a short synopsis of what's coming through Vancouver? Canada's the largest open land border. Yeah. So, and it is wide open. Canada is wide open. So during Prohibition, that's where all the booze came from, right? That we couldn't manufacture in the U.S., Molson and all those other places, right? They were working with Al Capone and all the other bootleggers, right? That's how the Kennedys got rich. So, yeah, Canada seems to be the next logical place to deal with. So yeah, I don't, and but the thing that he probably will need some kind of authorization is any military action. The best Congress can do is, I guess, threaten to withhold funding for these kind of operations. But again, I don't see the upside on them doing that, because I don't sense that the American people are as outraged about this as the people who are paid to oppose Trump are. So say this again. Okay. So what do we got here? Huge topic. Only 0.001% of imports are actually processed. So it's all coming through Vancouver, I assume, which would be the closest to the West Coast, I guess, or it's on the West Coast. Okay. Lower East Side will lead you down bigger lathers. Okay. So obviously we've got a huge problem. It is a spiritual problem when you're, in a sense, obviously it's a huge spiritual problem, not only a practical problem. It does tell us a lot about our young men. It tells us, well, I'll go with the biblical take on it. This in talking about what Trump's doing, because Trump's always the story, right? He pretty much dominates everything. But we'll look at Romans 13. We've looked at this before, and it talks about really what the responsibility of the leaders are, or a leader is, politically speaking. If it comes up here, there it is. So Romans 13, let everyone be subject to governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established, and authorities exist that have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God instituted, and to those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from the fear of the one in authority? Then do as right and be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath, to bring punishment on wrongdoers. So most people use this. These passages talk about our responsibility to the government, which it is. But it's also the government's responsibility to do right. It doesn't bear the sword for nothing. It's there to protect the citizens. Okay. They are God's servants, okay, agents of wrath, to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Okay. And again, I think really this is how Trump sees it. He's had his spiritual journey. We talked a couple of weeks ago about there was a reporter that asked Trump after the peace deal with the Palestinians on whether he thinks he's going to go to heaven with all the peace deals he's been making. And he wasn't sure. And although I know he has a lot of Christian people around him, so he's been on this kind of quasi spiritual journey, Christian journey of his. And I'm sure he looks at himself as God's agent for protecting the United States. And so I think I'm starting to lose my internet here again. Looks like things are a little bit choppy, but so let's see. Lucas, look up the mega meth lab that was creating their own precursor ingredients that was raided in Falklands, British Columbia. Canada makes its own. Really? So Canada is now, oh, great. So it's not even the cartels that are coming up through Canada. It's Canadians are doing these things. So this is what we're up against. Okay. And this is kind of the state of things, of rulers who have punted that responsibility. And like I said, anybody that doesn't like Trump, okay, there's lots of things not to like about Trump, but this time and time again, it comes back to me. If you don't like what Trump is doing, look in the freaking mirror. Okay. Trump has been a creation of our political and social and spiritual actions in this country over the last, I don't know, you could go back as long as you want, as long as this progressive atheistic era was started. And Trump is, like I said, what Americans have been thirsty for, someone who tells them what he's going to do and then actually does it and doesn't listen to the harpy, ruling class that thinks that they're elite. So if these are the threats that are coming against us, what better action can people, if there's a better action that you can take, if there's a better way to protect us from illegal drugs coming across the border, please tell us. But they don't have any answer because they haven't had this even deal with it. They've been ignoring this for how many years have we been calling for border security? At least 40 years. Back in the 80s, when of all people, Ronald Reagan started this whole thing by agreeing to an amnesty. Back then, I think there was 3 million illegal aliens. Now there's 10 times that number, at least. That's causing all kinds of problems. It's killing the drugs coming over the border are killing our citizens. The gangs coming over are, kidnapping and trafficking in young girls and sex trade, young boys. Remember Sound of Freedom? Okay, people care about these things. These are the kind of things people care about. And Trump is the first guy to come along to give us straight talk and straight action on it. So my sense is, well, okay, Lucas, make Canada the 51st state. I don't think we want Canada. Sorry, Lucas, but I don't think we want you guys. Canada's a pretty liberal place. And actually, when, if you remember Pierre Poilievre, Lucas, you can correct me on this, but he was pretty much the front runner for the prime ministership up there until Trump started talking about making Canada the 51st state. And that kind of ruined his chances. And I think it kind of, Canada had a pretty immature response to that by saying, well, fine, then we're not going to elect who we want to elect. We're going to elect who, goes against Trump just because we don't like Trump. They totally forsook their own well-being of their country and voted for a guy just to spite Donald Trump. So I don't think we want you guys as a 51st state. Canada has fallen and the world has seen it. Russia is the one we should fear. Yeah, Russia and China. But China, there's a strain. I've heard people talking. A lot of this has to do in dealing with Venezuela and South America. Has more to do with China. I think China's the bigger issue. China has been buying up ports all over the world. And I know they've been very influential. They've had oil deals with Venezuela. Venezuela sells cheap oil to Canada, Canada to China. Sorry, Freudian slip there. And China builds all kinds of infrastructure for Venezuela and those type of countries. I know China owns a lot of ports in the United States, and they own a lot of the ports in Central America. So some people think one of the motives for doing this is to try and lessen Chinese influence in Central and South America, which again is for our security and our best interest. Okay, China, no one's able to buy Trump. It doesn't seem like, or at least other countries. He's always been talking about China, right? China, bad Trump impersonation. But we have, okay, Monkey 17. I think you're going to take over the feed, aren't you? Trump is in Washington and your president is in Moscow. Trump is Putin's puppet. Well, there we go. You solved it all there, Monkey 17. Wow. So, yeah, I don't think Trump's anyone's puppet. Sorry, Monkey. Yeah, he's not. So he's doing, again, what he needs to do in the best interest of the country. And that's what he was elected to do. And that's what we elected him to do. And this is what we demanded that he do. And he's fulfilling it. Yeah. And this is what it involves. It involves blowing up, cigarette boats or whatever, high-speed boats with drugs in them. And yeah, people get killed, but you have to get serious. This is big boy stuff. Okay. And these are big, legitimate threats to us. So, and once he's done with South America, I guess he's going to have to turn his attention to Canada. But But, and Canada, that can't be good for Canada either. If Canada gets into this kind of crime, with it comes the degradation of your society. And maybe Canada's a little too far gone for that. I doubt it's Canadians doing this. I mean, Canada has imported, I think, percentage-wise, proportionally, had way more immigration, unchecked immigration, than the United States has. So maybe this is not, I don't know, Lucas, maybe this is not the Canadian people doing this. I can't imagine too many Canadians being on board for setting up fentanyl labs, but I can see that possibly see some of the people that they've let immigrate into their country doing that. Sure. So this is what we're faced with. And again, unchecked immigration is an understatement. And I don't think it's any coincidence that it follows that now all of a sudden drugs are starting to come in from the northern border, because if Venezuela and countries like that were sending us the dregs of their society, they were sending Canada the dregs of their society. So, excuse me, got a rough throat today. So again, that's kind of what we're faced with. And the thing that I am beginning to think about more and more is who's going to take up the mantle on this kind of thing. Who, if J.D. Vance, if things go well economically, we'll start with the upcoming election. If things start to turn around economically, and Trump's, which he usually does, once Reagan introduced his policies back in the 80s, the economy took about a year and a half to recover till things started getting really good. So maybe hopefully that'll happen now. So by early next year, the economy will start to pick up, and that's usually the most important thing in off-year elections. So, yeah. And then the next president, JD, needs to be just as strong as Trump, but there really is only one Trump. I don't know. Hopefully, Vance is taking copious notes, and hopefully he's sincere in his support for Trump and his desire when he speaks out for Trump, which he's supposed to do as vice president. Hopefully there's some sincerity to that. And he can, when he takes the reins, if he takes the reins, he can continue this kind of thing and not just be a standard politician. Because Trump has broken the mold, really. And we can't go back to the old mold in the Republican Party. And we can't buy the new mold of the Democratic Party. If we do that, if a Democrats comes to power anytime in the near future, before this radical strain, this civil war that's going on in the Democratic Party has been won by the good side, we can't have that. Then there'll be unchecked everything, and we won't even recognize our country, because they will not let this happen again. So it's interesting times. That's the curse I've always told you about. May you live in interesting times, because if things are interesting, bad things are happening. If life is boring, life is good. So, but we've been blessed to live in this interesting time. God is working through all of this. No doubt. I have no doubt that Trump is there for a reason. The opposition to him is there for a reason. It's all part of God's plan. And we'll see. Like Lucas, Canada looks like The Walking Dead because the homeless addiction problems. Yeah, I'm hearing all kinds of bad things about Canada. Really, I am. That's too bad, because it's a beautiful country. Yes, exactly my thought. He too needs to be taking notes. That'd be J.D. Vance. So it's all, we'll see what happens. Like I said, it needs to be done. Trump always strikes a deal, so he'll probably strike a deal with the people that are opposing him and will manage to get something done. And we'll see what it is. I'm out of time. I will see you guys next week. Hopefully next Friday I'll be back with Ben. But for now, take care. Thanks for listening, guys.